The COVID-19 pandemic catapulted our lives into the digital world, and it turns out all that video conferencing can have a significant impact, not only on our sense of well being, but our ego as well. The so called Zoom boom has resulted in a 30% uptick in cosmetic surgery procedures, with many more seeking consultations. Dr. Pamela Rutledge is the director of the Media Psychology Research Center, faculty in the Media Psychology program at Fielding Graduate University, and a contributor for psychologytoday.com. She's a scholar practitioner who applies expertise in human behavior and neuroscience to media and technology. Thanks so much for joining us to look at these trends today, Dr. Rutledge.
No, thank you. And thank you for such a lovely introduction.
The shift from in-person meeting to Zoom has been a blessing and a boon for business and tech, but from a psychological perspective, maybe not so much. So people are reporting that they are totally zoomed out. So tell us, why can living and working via Zoom feel so exhausting and so anxiety provoking?
Well, there's a lot of good reasons. First, let's give a little nod to the fact that we actually can keep working and keep connecting. So Zoom has done some good things. The trouble is we are used to a face-to-face world. So we judge Zoom, we judge that experience by what's normal for us. And what's normal for us is not watching ourselves talk. So here we are, we're trying to have a conversation, we're trying to focus on our colleague or our boss or our children or whomever, and out of the corner of our eye, we're seeing ourselves, and it's almost impossible to not look at yourself because we are hardwired that way. So now I'm watching myself, but trying not to watch myself. That's tiring. And then I'm also looking at myself and thinking, I don't look so good. Well, one of the reasons is all the time we see ourselves, we're in a mirror. So what we're seeing is exactly the opposite of what we're used to seeing. So unless your face is perfectly symmetrical, which is only true of about 3 people in the world, it looks weird to you. We're also on a camera lens, right? We're sitting 1.5 feet, 2 feet away from a camera lens, which distorts our face. And then we also don't have professional lighting or makeup. So here we are, we're looking at ourselves, we're very hypersensitive, we're picking on the little things that we don't like about ourselves, and that starts to, over time, undermine our self-confidence. It's not like we're just doing this once, right? We're doing this all the time. So it's not like you're just having a bad day or bad hair day and you can, in your brain, write it off. It really triggers that inner voice, that inner critical voice that starts nagging at you and starts undermining your confidence.
Well, it can feel like you're all alone in the analyzing and the criticizing, but the American Psychological Association reports that most people's self-confidence has taken a hit over this past year. So is the response the same for both men and women?
It's probably not the same. Women tend to be much more focused on how they look. But think about this. We've been in this environment, first of all, generalized anxiety, total uncertainty, a lot of not misinformation, conflicting information, however you want to think about it. So we're already got our little antenna up, our sensitivity to information, our sensitivity to danger. So we're starting to already look for problems, not solutions. Now, for some people, they've gained their, the COVID-19 joke, right? I've picked up the 19 pounds, so there's a lot of insecurity that's being developed just from this environment per se. But men will still have the same experience of preoccupation, of cognitive drain. They won't have the same level of self-consciousness with their looks for the most part. That's obviously not true of every single person, but women have been programmed to care a lot about how they look visually.
Well, for many, this pandemic period has been a time of epiphanies and revelations about life priorities. Things people were putting off have moved into the forefront. And for some, that means investing in themselves through cosmetic surgery. So how does this create a sense of self-control? And why is that significant, psychologically speaking?
Well, I think that's a really great point, that we can't just automatically presume because someone wanted to consult a plastic surgeon or a cosmetic surgeon or have some treatment done, that it's because they're lacking confidence. There are a lot of reasons why people engage in self-care. So it might be that You say, oh, this is a perfect time for me to go have that laser treatment done because, I can turn my camera off for a few weeks while my skin heals. So there are opportunities that people have for things that they do have a very realistic expectation of. They don't go in expecting to look, 20 if they're 40, but they just want to sort of tidy things up. I think that can be very positive. The real danger is when you start looking for ways to alter what should be unalterable. You want to look different from yourself. You're so used to putting an Instagram filter that you somehow think you should have a smaller nose and, bigger lips and all of these things that are really unrealistic. And so the people who are looking at cosmetic surgery or cosmetic procedures to achieve that kind of change are more likely to be disappointed and actually feel worse than what they intended. For people who have realistic expectations, who are taking advantage of this opportunity, they're actually going to feel better because they've taken control, they've made an effort. And during a time when we're so powerless, any kind of thing that gives you a sense of control can be very positive psychologically.
Well, and there actually appears to be quite a cultural shift in the way people are looking at cosmetic surgery. I mean, many procedures were actually on the rise pre-pandemic, and there seems to be a whole lot less secrecy around it as well.
Absolutely. Well, one thing that's really changed is the cost barrier. I mean, there's all kinds of procedures now that are, relatively speaking, quite accessible to a lot of people, whether you're talking about fillers or Botox or these sort of minor treatments that, used to be before it was $60,000 for a facelift or you're done, right? I mean, in other words, there was no sort of intermediate area, whereas now there's a lot of different things you can do, facials and different kinds of treatments that give people a sense that they're taking care of themselves, that they're getting sort of a fresh look without it being major.
So, can investing in one's appearance actually have lasting benefits to the way we perceive ourselves, both inside and out, or does it last as long as the filler lasts?
Well, I think, let's talk about investing in ourselves more broadly, right? Self-care is any intentional act that you take on your own behalf for your own well-being. So it could be a facial, it could be having a haircut, it could be taking a walk. There's a lot of ways to engage in self-care. If you're just counting on fillers to make you feel better about yourself, you're going to be very disappointed. But if you have a habit or a ritual behavior of taking care of yourself, taking some time, deep breathing, maybe a little, exercise, this sort of combination of effort that you make tells your body that you are worth taking care of. It helps talk to that inner voice, that inner critic, and say, hey, I'm really worth it. I'm worth investing in. I enjoy doing this for myself. And that over time actually builds your self-confidence, builds your mood, and really has positive, lasting implications.
Well, you alluded to this earlier. There is a big difference between judging your outer self against others' appearances and being preoccupied with every feature, every perceived flaw. When does it cross from self-care to something potentially more worrisome?
Well, let's talk a little bit about what sort of triggers people's tendency to make changes like that. One is that they're comparing themselves to other people. Social comparison has gotten a terrible rap in the press because it's like, oh, you shouldn't do social comparison, as if there was some choice to that. That's an innate biological response to being in a social environment. And you can compare up and you can compare down, and you can do both positively and negatively. If I look at someone and I am inspired by what they've accomplished, by how hard they work, or where, what they studied, or what they wrote, or how they spent their time, I'm going to be inspired. I can take those things away and say, boy, that person works really hard. I'm going to start getting up at 5 a.m. to write for an hour every day, or whatever, little tidbit of, that I've learned about how to get something done. But if I look at someone and say, gosh, I wish I were, 30 years old and 5'10" and, blonde hair, I can try and do those things, but it's not going to go well. So in that circumstance, I'm seeing myself as less than, not as something that has the potential for change and growth. So it's really taking that growth mindset and not evaluating yourself as a critical fixed point, but saying, what can I learn from this? How can I apply this in ways that help me grow or be something more than I want to be or find something new, versus how am I measuring myself up in a critical way? The easiest way for people to figure that out is to listen to the voice in their head. When they have a reaction, there's always an inner narrative. So pay attention to that so you can see how you're talking to yourself. I'll tell you, if you listen to your voice and then you ask yourself, would I speak to my children like that? Or would I speak to my sister or my, spouse or whatever like that? You would go, oh my God, no, I would never call them the names I call myself. But that same voice is programming your brain to think of yourself as, whatever label that oh, you idiot, or, you're so stupid, or all those things that people say to themselves without even thinking about it are actually very dangerous over time.
So it's really great advice. Calm that nattering voice in your head and teach it to give you empowering messages rather than messages that generally make you feel worse about yourself.
Absolutely. So if you're looking at yourself on Zoom and you're going, oh gosh, my hair looks terrible, stop that moment, find something else that you like, and say, well, my hair looks terrible, but I've got really great posture today, or I love that color lipstick, or just find something to sort of counter the argument. It seems weird at first, it will be very artificial, but if you continue doing that, it will become more natural and it will make a huge difference.
Great advice, Dr. Rutledge. Thank you so much for sharing your time with NewsPoint 360 today.
Always a pleasure.